This is the brand new Kindle Colorsoft, coming in at $280. It still has an e-ink screen, but now can show you full colors like for comic books. And on the other hand, we have the new iPad Mini 7, which on sale for right now you can get for $480. That's just a $200 difference. And it can do all the e-reader and comic book reading, as well as being an actual iPad. So which one of these devices are actually better for reading, but also which is just the better value overall? And if you were really looking for an e-reader or one of the other Kindle options, which there are many, better than the new Colorsoft. So let's talk about the Kindle just for a second. The Kindle Colorsoft came out just a couple weeks ago. It is supposedly faster at page turning, like the new Paperwhite, but the big selling feature is it is a color display. Now, the color display has also had some issues here at launch. There's been yellowing on the screen for a lot of Kindle users, and this problem is so widespread, Amazon's actually going to have a program for you to get your money back if you see that yellowing. So shipping is a little delayed right now, but it'll be back on sale soon, as are all the other Kindles. Now, this isn't my first Kindle. I've had them for many years. I had the previous Paperwhite generation, and I do really enjoy reading on an e-ink display, especially when I'm outside. But after many years of reading on just regular displays, like on my iPads and iPhone, I don't know if I care for it as much anymore. I'll get to the reading experience in a second, but let's talk about hardware and size. So if we were putting them side by side, the Kindle is smaller than the iPad Mini. You do have a very large chin at the bottom of the Kindle as well, and it's also lighter, but we're not talking a huge difference here. Here's the size difference. Again, the iPad Mini is definitely taller and just a tiny bit wider. If you were holding both in your hand at the same time, yes, the iPad Mini feels a little heavier, and if you were going to be reading for several hours, you'll likely notice that difference even more, but for me, it hasn't been a big deal. Now, I also got Amazon's vegan leather case, but honestly, I'm not crazy about it. It kind of makes it more uncomfortable to hold, so I usually find myself taking it out of the case if I'm actually going to be reading with it. Now, I also got Amazon's wireless charger, which is a $40 accessory, but you can charge the new Paperwhite and Colorsoft by just laying it on this kind of fabric material. I'd be honest, I'd be holding it right now, but I already returned it. I found it took up too much space on my nightstand or here in the office, and I already have 1,000 USB-C cables, and I can just plug this in via USB-C. And that is one huge hardware advantage for the Kindle over an iPad Mini: battery life. Every time I pick up my Kindle, I've only charged it once since I first got it, and even after almost 2 weeks of use, we're still at 84% battery. And so if you never want to have to think about battery, a Kindle is a great option. And I will say, even with the new iPad Mini 7, that has been kind of a frustration. If I didn't charge it the night before, 9 times out of 10, this just is dead when I go to pick it up. And if I haven't used it for a few days and I go to pick it up to go outside and read for a few minutes, it's just not going to have any battery. So I do wish this had way better standby time, which is just true of all of Apple iPads right now. I remember the halcyon days when you can just leave an iPad sitting around for seemingly weeks and weeks, and the battery will go down like 5 or 10%. Now, this thing's dead in like 24 hours, so I hope there's some kind of software fix Apple can do for that standby time. And the other big hardware advantage on the Kindle is it is waterproof. So if you wanted to read by the pool and never have to think about water, the Kindle is a better option. Although my iPad's gotten wet before, and I put it in some precarious situations filming this video, and it's fine. Also, if you're enjoying these slider shots, it's thanks to Neewer. They sent me their slider and tripod. I'll put links down in the video description, but they got me the cool slow-mo shots in this video. Also, the Kindle only comes in one color, which is black, and the iPad comes in multiple colors. I mean, if you would call that a color, but you know, it's pretty pastel-y. But let's get to the key part of the review, which is the reading experience. What is it like to read on a Kindle like the Colorsoft versus the iPad Mini? And if you've ever used e-ink before, you'll know the ink is easier on the eyes. Right now, this is actually backlit, but you can just tap the percentage and battery, and you can actually enable auto brightness, which is new for these newer Kindle models. You can turn that backlight down or turn it all the way off. And now you have a straight up e-ink reader. Now, I found a lot of times when I was picking it up to read, it was at night. And so I was having to turn on the backlight anyway. You can go into that dark mode if it's in the evening. And I found that I did prefer that, especially when I'm reading in the dark. But to be honest, once you turn on that backlight, you do kind of lose the advantage of e-ink over something like an iPad display. I can turn the iPad display dark by just going to layout. And this is the Kindle app, by the way, not Apple Books. And I can go into dark mode, and I find my eyes don't really fatigue that much when I'm reading off the iPad, so I don't personally feel an advantage. You may be different. If you get eye fatigue from reading on an LCD or OLED display, then the e-ink is probably going to be better for you. But for me, I'm just fine reading on my iPad, especially in this dark mode. Now, if you go into broad daylight, especially if you plan to read on the beach, yes, e-ink is going to perform better there. I took it outside by the pool, direct sunlight, even in the shade, and just the overall reflections are way less on the e-ink, and you don't have to worry about brightness because the brighter it is outside, the easier it is to read the e-ink display. But to be fair, the iPad mini is also really good reading outside too. I never really struggled to read the words if I had to change the angle slightly just by tilting it a little bit. I didn't find that to be a big deal, and I often work outside too. Now I will say a nano texture iPad, which they don't have that option on the mini right now, that would probably be a super popular option. I have not gotten any nano texture devices yet, and from talking to Jason Aten, my co-host on the Primary Technology podcast, you can watch it, I'll link it above and in the description. He loves nano texture, and it seems like everybody else on the internet does too, so I may have to try that, and that might win me over. But there's no option for that on the iPad mini right now. Now, one of the other reasons I like to read ebooks is highlighting and bookmarking pages. Now, the Kindle Colorsoft is actually fairly good at highlighting. You'll see it is delayed because it's e-ink and it's having to refresh, but it is responsive, and I find when I go to highlight, well, that time it actually turned the page, but if I go to highlight something, hold your finger down for a second and then drag it, it does pretty well for an e-ink display. Most of the time it was accurate and I didn't have to try more than once. Of course, when you're working with an iPad like the mini, highlighting is way more responsive, faster, and that's because you're dealing with like an iPad display that's already really good. Also, tapping and holding on a word, like if you want to get a definition, super fast on the iPad. And it does work on the Kindle, but it's just a little slower, takes a second. Pretty responsive. Again, from previous Kindle models, it is an improvement. But just overall looking at the difference, you are going to be waiting a few more seconds on a Kindle than on an iPad. Also, when it comes to resolution, you are dealing with 300 ppi on the Kindle Colorsoft, but the new iPad mini 7 does beat it at 326 ppi. Now, I'm not going to say that the Kindle Colorsoft text looks blurry or fuzzy, but if you get really, really close, you'll see the difference. The iPad mini looks a little sharper. Again, for most reading, it's not a big deal. It didn't bother me when I wasn't thinking about it, but there is a slight difference there. Okay, but what about color? Color is the big feature on the Kindle Colorsoft, and one of the things you can do is actually buy and read comics right here on the Kindle. Now, if you just really love an e-ink display and you've always wanted to see comics on there, now you have it. And you can read comics and they look cool in color. Maybe they even look more like a printed comic because of that e-ink display. But if we were talking about what is the best color experience, well, I'll just let you decide. I mean, reading a comic book on something like the iPad mini versus the Kindle Colorsoft, I mean, it's kind of no contest in my opinion. You can also adjust the warmth level here on the Kindle Colorsoft, so that might have been appearing a little orangey. So turning that down, you can see a little more natural color, but again, if you want to look at comics and things in color, I mean, my goodness, the iPad mini just looks great. All right, and before I hail a winner, let's talk about the ecosystem. When it comes to syncing your reading place, Amazon's system is great for that. It's nice to be able to just buy books right here on the Kindle device and not have to go to the website, but that has more to do with Apple than Amazon. And if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription and you're in that world, obviously the Kindle's going to be a great option. But here's the thing about an iPad. I can swipe to go home, and this is like an iPad. I have my text messages. I can control my smart home. I have shortcuts. Now, you could argue that it's too distracting and maybe you want it to do even less like the Kindle, but if you wanted to see what is the best value for the money you're going to spend on one of these devices, this is like an iPad. I did a whole review on this iPad mini. I'll link it above and in the description, but this is a super powerful device too. I edited podcasts on iPad mini for several years. You can now do Final Cut on this iPad mini and Logic, lots of stuff. And honestly, I kind of liked when I was reading for a little bit and then maybe I just wanted to watch a video. Like I could just open up the YouTube app on here and watch a video. That's something you can do with an iPad and not a Colorsoft. Again, maybe you're not looking for that kind of distractibility in your device, but if you're looking at value, I do think you have to take that into account. Also, I find myself actually liking the Apple Books app. I mean, you have the page curl, which is great, but I also have my audiobooks in here and those will sync with my iPhone. So overall, if I'm going to do an ebook, I actually just like it in Apple Books. It's on all my Apple devices. I like the whole books read this year, and now you actually get a recap of that at the end of the year. And you can even mark books as read, even if you haven't bought them or read them as an ebook. You can just tap and hold on a book if you had a physical version and read it, and then just tap mark as finished, and that will be in your history. And I've done several audiobooks through Apple Books, and it just works great. Again, between all the devices, the design of it, I just prefer it. All right, so if you were looking at a device specifically for e-reading, should you get a Kindle or an iPad mini? Well, I'm going to be honest, I would not get the Kindle Colorsoft. Not only is there an issue with the yellowing, and you can see the reviews here on Amazon reflecting that, but there's actually some other options for Kindles that I think are better. For instance, you can get the Kindle Paperwhite Signature Edition for $80 less at $200. You still get 300 ppi, same storage, better battery life up to 12 weeks, still does the wireless charging, although I think it takes up too much space. And it also comes in more colors. You can get the metallic jade and raspberry. So if you just love e-ink or you're going to be reading a lot outside, yeah, get the Kindle, but maybe not the Colorsoft. Maybe get the Paperwhite edition or the older Paperwhite. But if you're just looking for one device of this size and you can spend a little more money, right now the iPad mini 7 on Amazon is $484. That's only $200 more than the Kindle Colorsoft, 128 gigs of storage, and it comes in colors. I think this is actually a great deal. I was excited to keep this Kindle and use it for all my e-reading, but after spending almost 2 weeks with it, I think I'm just actually going to stick with the iPad mini. I know my last iPad mini video, I talked about who is this for, and there's not many use cases. Well, after reading with this and the Colorsoft side by side for several weeks, I'm just going to stick with the iPad mini. You get all the power of the iPad, you can do all the stuff in your ecosystem, and it still does really good at ebooks too. But let me know what you think down in the comments. If you just absolutely love e-ink displays and you're going for a new Kindle, I'd love to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button before you go. If you wanted to see my full review of the iPad mini, you can check out this video right up here. And if you want to learn about some of the Apple Intelligence features, which are also on the new mini, but also on your Mac and your iPhone, you can check out this video right up here. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.